think we want to enable those of you who came to hear Ed's presentation to ask any questions you might have. I think in the spirit of respecting everybody's opportunity to participate, I don't think we want to get into long discussions. Questions and answers probably work best initially. So if anybody's got any questions of Ed or of us, please go to the lectern, give us your name, and ask away. If nobody has any questions, we'll move on to the next activity. But yes.
My name is Krystyna Kurzyca. I live on 18 Roosevelt Street in Great Barrington. My question is to you. I heard that you guys are dabbling with the idea of using glyphosates on the McAllister property, and I would like to have the answer whether you are doing it or not.
Yes?
Currently, there is not any applications of herbicides. As
And
part
you
of
don't-
our future work, we're working with the Conservation Commission to come up with alternative ways for dealing with invasive species there. It's not to say things won't change, but our current plan is to evaluate different options.
Thank you. Any other questions? Comments?
Hi, I'm Vivian Orlowski, live at Lakeview Road, and I also chair the Agricultural Commission here in town. And we've been focusing recently on protecting our pollinators, which are so vital for our food supply and their ecosystem services. We rely on them for pollinating over 75% of flowering plants and trees, and a lot of our food crops come to us via pollination. What is the impact of glyphosate on pollinators?
Okay, good question. Bees, for instance, have microbes in their digestive systems like we do. And the research that's out says that when honeybees ingest something with glyphosate in it, whether it's nectar or pollen or whatever, that it goes into their digestive systems and disorients them. And this is one of the reasons for the colony collapse, that they get disoriented and can't find their way back to the hive. So I think there's good research on the computer for that. One of the bills that I testified on last Tuesday was the pollinator bill. And that pollinator bill passed out of committee. Did you hear that?
Yes.
Oh, good.
SMITty
Right.
has been very supportive of that.
Right.
It's gone through his committee, at least I think it's the third year.
Yes.
And,
Yeah,
and
that's
it
what
actually
takes
passed-
3 years.
It passed previously, but it gets stuck in the Ways and Means Committee, even though the cost of it is minimal, so that's another issue. But no, Smitty's been he's the chair of the Environment, Natural Resources, and Agricultural Commission, and he's been
If
very
you haven't
supportive.
submitted written testimony for that bill, please do so. I'm on the Ag Commission in Plainfield, so, and we've sent in testimony on that.
Yeah, you have a pollinator resolution too, like we do here in our town.
Yes, we're a pollinator-friendly community. Yep.
I just have one other follow-up to recommend for the board or anyone else who's interested, and I wanted to ask Ed if you're familiar with this book. It's called Beyond the War on Invasive Species, A Permaculture Approach to Ecosystem Restoration. The
Very good
forward
book.
by David Holmgren, who's the co-originator of permaculture. And it's a woman who's done a lot of restoration work. She teaches at Oregon State University, and she has worked in conservation and restoration. And her approach is that we need to manage invasive species for beneficial uses, such as food, medicine, compost, nectar for bees, bioremediation, and more. So it's not just a question of saying, let's minimize, or let's be careful about what we use to eradicate invasive species, but how can we keep them under control by actually finding uses for them so that there will be an incentive to keep them under control, and that will minimize the cost if you can then use the product afterwards, rather than just a question of, let's get rid of this and then we have to pay a high fee to use non-toxic methods, and then it becomes a question of cost, as you raised. But if we can use the products that come from some invasive species at least, then we have incentive to do this, and it becomes economically viable.
I think that's an excellent approach. I'm not familiar with that book. I don't do a lot with invasives, but I have done a lot in the past. So that's probably I'll check into that book.
It came out a few years ago, and I'm just reading it now, and I find it very...
Before you leave tonight, let us know the title and the author.
Okay, I
You're
can write
right.
it out for you.
That'd be
so I
great.
can submit on the-
Great, thank
I-
you.
for you and
I
share.
think we have to rethink and revisit the issue. I'm very concerned about habitat loss. I don't know if any of you are birders, but I'm a birder. If you've been reading about the devastation that birds have taken a place, we've lost almost a third of our bird species populations since the 1970s. Now, they say it's habitat loss. Well, it is habitat loss to some respects, but it's the chemicals that have been out since the 1970s that are killing these birds. And glyphosate has an impact on birds, on pollinators, but there's a whole class, a whole family of pesticides called neonicotinoids, that are really devastating many of our native wildlife.
Any other questions?
Can I
Bobby?
do another one?
No, but let's let people who haven't asked.
I have two questions. I wonder if the board would be interested in hearing an inventory from town on where and how Roundup is used, or glyphosate is used in our town, by the township.
I think any information we have is helpful, and I suspect it's also related to the Board of Health. I mean,
Yeah.
we have to work together, I think, to
I'm
understand. the
curious whether,
consequences.
for instance, in the cemeteries, is that a place where, glyphosate?
It's not jurisdictional for us.
Okay. Another question I have is for Ed. It's, as I understand it, there's a really wholesale application of pesticides and herbicides in railway corridors. So the railroad running through our town is clearly, kind of an Auschwitz for plant life and soil life.
Now, they're spraying the track bed
Yes.
with all that porosity, all that big stones that they have. Railroads are very, very, very difficult to deal with.
Okay.
In Pittsfield, I fought them the whole time I was the conservation administrator there. They think they're omnipotent, that they can do anything they want. These guys can help you quite a bit when they get near a resource area at the toe of their bed, because you have jurisdiction there. But they don't have jurisdiction on a lot of where they're spraying this. So it's difficult. I would personally keep the pressure on them. I really would. Ask questions. So,
Are there, Jess?
Should I go up, or?
Go ahead.
You're on. She minds?
It doesn't look at home.
Just do it for me.
Okay, thank you.
Just your-
Thank you. I do worry about not caring enough about the threat of invasive species. I think we can talk about the approaches and how we tackle them in certain areas, and rare species, but we are losing species, common and rare, to invasive species. Second greatest threat across the world is how we're losing these species. And I think we can tie it to other things, but habitat loss, then invasive species, this comes out of many organizations looking at red species, at-risk species, common species. So invasive species is a problem, and I kind of don't want this discussion to diminish
the ecological damage that invasive species do, especially to some of these really sensitive areas like wetlands and where rare species are. I do think we're never gonna tackle invasive species everywhere, but we have to really think about it around rare species. And I think we have to think about it. I mean, wetlands are doing so much for us, and the healthier they are, the more they're gonna help us with flood storage capacity and some of these other things we greatly rely on. So I don't want us to kind of walk away from invasive species as a really important threat that we need to tackle. So I just really wanna plug invasive species are a problem, and we have to, as humans, we've brought them here, we've made decisions, some poor in the past, some we're continuing to make, but we also have to take responsibility for what the damage we're doing and the damage we're continuing to do into the future. So I don't want the community to kind of diminish their concern. The concern around invasive species is real, and we're certainly gonna have to be okay with them in certain places, but, you know, tackle them where we can. So, anyways, I just wanted to.
Point well taken. Yes.
So, thank you for this great presentation. My name is Gabrielle Senza, and I live here in town on Railroad Street. And I wondered, I heard about this last night on NPR, I think, that the EPA is attempting to put forward, I don't know what the proper terms are, but that they're looking to require all researchers and studies that have even been done in the past, like the Harvard Six Cities research, which continues to give us a lot of good information about air pollution, water pollution, and everything else. And that they're asking the researchers to submit all of the detailed, confidential information in order to validate the research, which has been peer reviewed and accepted. So what has the signal, the alarm is that the EPA is making motions as of our current.
EPA is what?
Making motions to discount all kinds of really important research that has been done by demanding this confidential information. Have you heard anything about this?
Let me try and limit this for a minute. It's a valid point, but it's not about glyphosate at the moment. And we can't afford to be here
Correct.
a long time. So I'm glad you raised the issue,
Just wanted to raise it. Thank you.
and we
I'll be happy
appreciate
to
that.
talk to you after this.
Okay.
Good
Yeah,
suggestion. Yes, sir.
Yes, hi. I'm Tom Zetterstrom from Canaan, and Shep and I have spoken, and Nan came to my talk that I gave to the Great Barrington Land Conservancy in September. I would like to amplify some of the thoughts that Jess just brought out about not understating the impact of invasive plants on our native landscape. Just 10 days ago, Dr. Doug Tallamy was the prime speaker at the Berkshire Botanical Garden. His research as an entomologist is focused on bird survival of fledgling birds that need to feed on the insects that eat native plants. They don't eat Japanese knotweed. And I will try to address some of those complexities of the food web in my presentation, if that is still intending to move forward. And I guess I would say, since some of you might also be interested, it will describe 3 types of invasive plant environments and the effect on the ecology and what we have done toward restoration after eradication. From a pollinator perspective, from a riparian perspective, from a woodland perspective, they're all success stories. And I'll look forward to sharing that with you all.
When?
I think I mentioned at least 3 times during my presentation.
Tom Zetterstrom.
No. When are you coming here to do that?
December 18th.
Maybe December, more likely January.
More likely January. for
I
sure.
don't want
The
you to
next
think I'm not
meeting.
concerned about invasives too, I am concerned. It's the method of management that I'm concerned about as well.
Okay.
But there's no doubt about
Yes,
it,
ma'am.
we've got problems.
I live on George Street. And I'm just curious, so if invasive species in the wetland, for example, are treated with glyphosate, doesn't it also impact the native species? I'm just ignorant.
So I'll get into it a little bit, but I mean, I think one of the things that Sari and I, as a company, we do is we offer people a range of options to fit how they want to work within their ethic, and we give them pros and cons to each way of doing it. Some invasive species that occur in wetlands have intense root systems. So Phragmites australis, the root systems go down 8 feet. You can't dig it out. It's very hard to address the rhizomatic mat in wetland areas. And one of the ways we pioneered in a place like Campusa Bog, where that has 35 rare and endangered species in it, was to do a clip and drip, where we were literally injecting each stem to have the herbicide just contained within the stem. We can argue about different data in terms of how this degrades in the roots. Our understanding from a variety of peer-reviewed documents, but also working under Heritage, the Natural Heritage and Endangered Species Program, is that glyphosate or its byproducts do not exit the stem and degrade as the roots also degrade in these areas. So it doesn't exit where you put it into. And that allows us to do a very concise treatment individually. Again, we're licensed, we've been trained over 20 years. I mean, it's a different ethic than perhaps a long lead and feed mentality. It's very precise.
So that may be the thing would be, so what you need it for, it's valuable, but somebody thinking that they don't like weeds on their gravel driveway is kind
Again-
of ridiculous.
Again, the question is what are you managing for? And for us, some of the losing rare species in some of these places where we don't have it anywhere else in the state is extremely important for us to have certain tools. It's a wide spectrum, so, and we're happy to bring anyone out to any of our restoration sites to understand how we've decided how to approach it and work with people. But this is where the Conservation Commission, they asked us to design something that they could evaluate. And so, we came up with something. Goats at McAllister with all the dogs off leash is not an appropriate thing, so you are limited sometimes by other reasons, how people use an area. So you take all these factors in and you come out with hopefully a solution that each landowner feels comfortable with and can proceed with without stopping and being so scared of anything that invasive species aren't dealt with.
Thanks, Jess.
Right, but now I really am.
Now you can, okay. It's 8 o'clock. We'll do this for another 5 minutes, and then we need to move on. Yes, sir.
Bob Kilmer, dairy farmer, Ramapo Road, Ashley Falls, Mass. I know you're asking us not to believe in the EPA and the FDA and all our other government officials or official oversight. And we're supposed to believe in all these small outlying studies. I can guarantee you, on my farm right now, my land has never been more productive. I have plenty of earthworms and microbes. I have bumblebees galore. I will say I don't have as many honeybees as we once used to. But supposedly the bumble is native, not the honeybee. Supposedly the bumblebee is more prone to neonics, more prone to pesticides than the honeybee. Yet I have a lot more bumblebees than I do honeybees. My point is, the Roundup we're using, most studies says it's much safer than what we used to use in the past. The reason why, as farmers, we use these products is because they are safer. Atrazine was a perfect example of one of the ones that was not very good. It did not break down. It went down into the aquifers. That's why we use GMOs, to limit the amount of insecticides we are using. We use Roundup and herbicides now that are breaking down, or we are told break down. And I have to believe in the large studies and our agencies. I mean, what else am I supposed to do here?
You know what? I'm a 4th generation farmer. I would like to believe them too. It's taken me years to look at corporate science and say, I can't believe this anymore. Now, I understand where you're coming from, because I've been in agriculture my whole life. I have 2 sons. One is a full-time farmer and the other is a part-time farmer. I have a grandson who thinks he's a farmer. All right. I understand your position. I do. But I don't know how you know you have as many microbes as you had before glyphosate. If you have 2 substances and one is less toxic than the other, so maybe 4 drops will kill this plant, and this glyphosate only takes 3 drops. Is that safer? It's still killing. You see, it's safer than other herbicides, but it's not safe.
Do you have an alternative to using a herbicide?
What did your father use?
My father was not a farmer, he was a factory worker.
Okay. My father cultivated.
Cultivation is intensive, less productive, and my idea of why the microbes and stuff are still there is because my corn yields better than my predecessor's corn.
Can I make a suggestion? I think it's a legitimate point, and I'm glad we heard it,
We should go
because
over
we
here and
hadn't
talk
heard the
about
other
this.
side. But if you guys want to continue the conversation afterwards, that'd be terrific.
There you go.
Thank you.
But I appreciate it, because we don't hear that stuff. We got a few more minutes. You were next, you're last.
Okay, I'm last, yeah. Peter Martin, I'm down the line there in Sheffield as well. And over the years, we've had honeybees, and we've seen a decline in their population as far as keeping them, raising them. You can't just have bees. You have to be a beekeeper. You have to really take care of them for them to survive. And I do know that a big portion of what they eat is the Japanese knotweed. If you go out there when it's blooming, they're all over it. So if you go out there and you think that it's gonna be a quick fix to spray all the knotweed and not hurt any of the pollinators, that's not true. And the honeybee works in a system of community where it is the most effective pollinator. Because what it does is it goes back to the hive, it communicates, it's the communication of their whole system is what does it. They communicate to other bees where the maximum amount of pollinate, where the pollen is, where the nectar is, where they can go. And then the whole hive just buzzes right into it because they know how to communicate and they work that way, whereas the bumblebees don't do that. And a lot of our native pollinators don't do that. I'm not putting a big push out for the pollinators, but they are definitely being affected. So as we go along and we look at it and go, okay, prove it's safe, prove that it's harmful. Okay, we see that there's a big decrease in the pollinator population as well as the birds that are involved in eating all these insects that are being affected. So as you go along, 10, 20, 30 years down the road, you're gonna find out that it's wrong. I talked to this old fella who said that he remembers when DDT was, it took him 40 years. 40 years to find out that it was harmful, and to get them to take it off the market. So, so we've been around almost 40 years with this now. So we're gonna have to find out, and we're gonna have to make a stand. And I think that it's a good point to start local for different towns to adopt the pollinator policies of protecting them, and also the spraying of the things that affect pollinators, because they're both hand in hand.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're next.
Ted Pittman, Sheffield. Conservation
Look how much
Commission?
time we're giving to all you people who are
Well,
from
just next door,
away.
yeah. I just have one simple question, and it's actually to both of you. Like we have this come before us all the time, you know, people want to use pesticide to control invasives. And I just think as a regulator, how do we, if you got a chemical that's EPA approved and DEP approved, how do we say no to it?
One of us. Constantly.
Yeah. I mean, because you can be appealed, so, you know, you don't want to get into that kind of
We
volume, so.
don't get appealed, and we win when we get appealed.
You go.
I'll address that in a minute.
Okay.
Anybody else have anything, because I'd like us to, Michael.
And you?
Stand up, tell us who you are.
Hi, Michael, I'm on the Board of Health here in Great Barrington. You mentioned you had a more, a talk more geared towards the community aspect of glyphosate.
Right.
Is that something you ever give to boards of health? Or could, or would be
My
applicable?
focus generally is on how our food is totally contaminated with it.
Okay.
And that's Board of Health.
Okay.
So I'd be glad to come down and do that sometime.
Can I get contact information?
Sure.
Thank you.
With that, Ed,
Yes.
thank you so much for coming here.
Thank you for having me.
A personal perspective. At almost every meeting, Lisa reminds us about how bad glyphosate is. And
She's very intelligent.
she is, but I think that this conversation has changed, at least for me, the things we need to consider when we hear about glyphosate. So I suspect that it would be an important opportunity for the commission to sort of pivot from where we've been and understand how we can better manage invasives, the environment, and how we do that with herbicides and whatnot. So it's been wonderful for us, and thank you for coming.
That's the good approach, and keep the conversation going.
Yeah, and we'll bring you back. Yes, sir.
I was wondering what your next steps are likely to be.
Well, I think at some point, I don't know if it'd be tonight, but at some point, this commission will have a conversation about how we can intelligently deal with the frequent requests that we have to manage invasives. So it's not just about the herbicides that you use, it's about a comprehensive look at the environment. And I think one of the things we've tried to do is educate ourselves over the past few years about multiple issues. And this is an opportunity for us to look differently in the future about how we will deal with invasive management. It's a comprehensive issue. We pay a lot of attention to pollinators. We pay a lot of attention to restoration of habitat. And now we gotta try and put some of that together and do it a little more comprehensive. So thank you all for coming. Our meetings are always open and available for conversations, and you're all more than welcome to come back. Now we have other business.